Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bites, our weekly review of some of the biggest stories making headlines across the industry. I'm Nova Safo. This week, Meta signs a 20-year deal for this newfangled technology the kids are calling nuclear power. Florida's social media ban for kids gets banned, at least for now. And the godfather of AI says he's making his own artificial intelligence that's, well, less likely to endanger civilization itself. I'm joined by a regular contributor, Jewel Burke-Solomon from Collab Capital, for her take on these stories and more. Welcome, Jewel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
A pleasure to have you. And as always, we're going to start with our bite of the week. This is where we have our guest give us the number that tells us everything about the week in tech. And Jewel, did you do your homework? Do you have a number for us?
I do have a number. It is 1,121. And
Okay.
that is the number of megawatts that is contemplated in this new Meta and Clinton Clean Energy or Constellation Energy deal that was done this week.
Yeah, 1,100 megawatts or 1 gigawatt, which is a precious thing for the tech company. So let's get into that first story. What Meta has done is sign a deal with Constellation Energy, which, by the way, is the nation's largest operator of nuclear power reactors. And this deal would keep one of their plants operating. This plant is in southern Illinois. It's been around since the mid-1980s, and it's been losing money, actually. Its future has been uncertain as of, and a couple of years from now, it might have had to go out of business. But now Meta is keeping it afloat. And why? Why does Meta care to keep this plant open?
Well, it's probably no surprise, but Meta has been doing a lot in the AI space, and they need more energy to be able to continue in this AI race. And so, like some of the other major tech companies, Meta has seen an opportunity with nuclear power, and has signed this deal with Constellation Energy to be able to keep a nuclear power plant open that, as you kind of alluded to, was potentially going to close. And with this deal, 20-year contract, it will remain open, which hopefully will save some jobs and also help Meta achieve their goals of counterbalancing all of that's going on with their development of AI with clean energy kind of counteraction.
Now, AI is extraordinarily power hungry, right? I mean, we have not just Meta, but all the big players that are in the AI space looking around, scrounging around for power.
That's right. Yep, it is. That is happening. It's necessary for these companies to continue to develop. They have to have the power sources to fuel what they're developing.
And why are AI companies so interested in nuclear power as opposed to, say, solar or wind or anything else?
Well, nuclear power does provide this carbon-free power, reliable power, in ways that some of the other energy sources may not be as reliable. And also, it's available. So there are these power plants around the country, and these energy companies around the country that have a problem as well, where they were, in many cases, going to run out on their existing tax subsidies. And so we're looking for a lifeline, if you will. And so there's this what looks like a pretty even exchange in terms of what these power companies are getting, nuclear power companies are getting, as well as what these major tech companies are getting by doing deals with them.
Is there another solution? Because at some point, we're going to run out of nuclear power plants to keep open. What else is big tech looking at to try to solve their power problem?
Well, I mean, obviously, we see these data centers are going up everywhere. I live in Atlanta, and in the South, there's a big story about where these centers are going up and how they're going to be impacting the communities that they're going around in. Of course, I think folks are looking at solar as a potential option, water, energy sources, all of these things. But the hot story this week has been around how nuclear can kind of solve the problem.
And I thought it was interesting that Google made a partnership with this company that's trying to put together smaller modular nuclear reactors that perhaps they can get up and running faster than the typical 11-year time frame to get a traditional nuclear power plant up and running. So lots of different efforts to kind of find creative solutions to this problem, right? Of finding
Absolutely.
Power.
Yep. And speed is the name of the game. So I think we're going to see a lot more creative quick, efficient solutions coming online here in the coming months and years.
Well, in the immediate term, there's something going on in Florida that I wanted to talk about, and that's our second story. Florida enacted a social media ban last year for kids under 14. They're not supposed to be able to open up accounts. Now, that might sound good to some people who are trying to protect their kids from some of the ills of social media, but a federal judge this week blocked the state from enforcing its ban. The law is being challenged on First Amendment grounds. Now, can you help us understand what the tech industry's stance is as to why they would want to oppose this ban?
Yeah, I mean, the tech industry really is saying that parents should be the ones to make these decisions, and it shouldn't be up to broad and wide sweeping bans. They're saying that these bans, as they're written, are too broad. They're not specifying the specific platforms that they're talking about. They may be impeding on freedom of speech, they're saying. And so there are a lot of these tech industry groups that are really fighting to make sure that these laws don't hold and that they're blocked really at every turn.
It's interesting that this fight is happening in Florida because this is a state that is solidly run by a majority Republican legislature and governor. So it's interesting that they've adopted a ban, and here is the tech industry opposing something that you'd think there would be some common ground on terms of like personal liberties, etc.
Yeah, this story is pretty interesting in terms of who's on what sides of it. I'm reading it and I'm a parent and thinking it's shocking to me that there is so much of a fight around something that I think we can all agree, young people having access to social media is having a negative impact on their mental health, on learning outcomes. And it was surprising to me reading this story that there is so much energy around blocking laws that would, hopefully help curb some of the social media addiction that we're seeing in young people.
It's interesting. You're in Atlanta, and there's another case in Atlanta that's very similar. This one about requiring age verification for kids under 16. A judge may rule in that case in the days and weeks ahead. And one of the arguments that the state of Atlanta is making, or the state of Georgia, excuse me, is making, is that this is their kind of effort to get age verification, at least for kids under 16. It's sort of like, when minors have to be checked to make sure they're not being served alcohol in bars. And yet, again, we have the tech industry fighting back against this rule on similar grounds, freedom of speech and overly burdensome regulation. So for you in Atlanta, how do you see this rule and the tech industry's opposition of it?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from what I'm reading here locally that we'll have a similar fate as what has happened in Florida. Again, it seems the trend is that these laws are not holding; they're being blocked, and there are a lot of groups who are really fighting against them, including Net Choice and some of the other industry associations. So we'll continue to track the story, but it looks like it is going to be up to parents to really control what their kids are doing online, and they're not going to have a ton of support from these laws enforcing it.
All right, and let's switch to our final story here. This also has to do a little bit about kind of the give and take of tech and its benefits versus its costs. And now the man known as the godfather of AI, his name is Yoshua Bengio. He's starting a nonprofit lab to train artificial intelligence in a different way than other companies have been training them. And the idea is to make them less like humans, less, not more. And this would be a complete paradigm shift to what AI companies are doing now. And he warns that what they're doing, they need to stop doing. He says it could literally endanger human survival itself, which, isn't too scary. Here's a clip of Bengio at a TED Talk a couple of months ago.
Recent studies in the last few months show that these most advanced AIs have tendencies for deception, cheating, and maybe the worst, self-preservation behavior. But if they really want to make sure we would never shut them down, they would have an incentive to get rid of us. but it might be just a few years away or a decade away.
Now, you work with a lot of startups, and there are lots of newcomers in the AI space looking at different ways of using AI, developing AI. Is there a safer way to develop this technology? Are there people working on that?
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, every pitch we get these days that has AI in it, everyone that's starting a startup today is thinking about how they can leverage AI. And there are certainly safer ways to go about that. I think it's all about being mindful from the start in terms of how folks are developing models and integrating agentic capabilities into their solutions. So it's actually really encouraging to hear from one of the AI godfathers talking about what we should be concerned with, the realities of what's really happening. Law Zero, his organization's mission, is really about prioritizing safety over commercialization. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that from some of the larger companies, that prioritization of safety. So I think he's onto something, and hopefully the industry kind of heeds the warnings that he's sharing with us, given his deep knowledge. And hopefully it helps, everyone be a bit more mindful in terms of how they're developing these companies.
And the smaller players, the startups you work with, do you think they're taking his warnings seriously?
Some are. I think that those, depending on what their mission is and if they're mission driven and also thinking about the outcomes of what they're building, they are thinking about some of these warnings and thinking about this idea of developing agents that are more of the scientific AI and really on the side of observation and explanation versus mimicking human behavior. I think that's something that some companies are considering, not all. I think a lot of companies are certainly wanting to be in this race and finding the fastest path to, AGI. But I'm hopeful, and certainly for our part, as we're evaluating companies, we are looking into what are their frameworks for ensuring safety and privacy, and making sure that the data that they're using to train their models is owned, they're doing all the right checks to ensure that there is a safe outcome for both the users and their partners, stakeholders as well. So that's something that we're evaluating. I can't say the same for all venture capitalists, but I do think that people are certainly considering these issues more deeply than prior.
Well, that's certainly encouraging. And as Pengio said, we have about 5 years. He said we have a 5-year window to get this right before agentic AI, is really much more sophisticated than perhaps that we can deal with. Well, thanks, Jewel. That's Jewel Burks-Solomon from Collab Capital. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for Marketplace Tech Bites Week in Review. Jesus Alvarado produced this episode, and I'm Nova Safo. We'll see you next week. This is APM.